Before the Second World War, there was a small, sunny town in Italy. The town had old buildings, small cafes, and friendly people. In this town lived a young man named Guido. Guido was a Jewish man. He was not tall or very strong, but he had a kind face and a big smile. He was funny and always made people laugh. Guido did not have much money. He lived with his uncle, who was also kind and quiet. Guido dreamed of one day having his own bookstore. He loved books and stories. But for now, he worked as a waiter in a fancy hotel. He worked hard, carrying heavy trays and serving rich guests. Even though the work was tiring, Guido kept his happy spirit. He believed that life was full of good things. One day, something wonderful happened. Guido was riding his old bicycle through the town square. He was not looking carefully, and he almost hit a beautiful young woman. The woman's name was Dora. She was a school teacher. She came from a rich and important family in the town. Dora was kind and smart, but she sometimes felt sad. Her life was planned by her mother, who wanted her to marry a rich man from a good family. That day, when Guido almost hit her, he did not say sorry. Instead, he looked at her and called her princess. He said it with such honesty and warmth that Dora smiled. This was their first meeting. Guido never forgot her face. After that day, Guido tried to see Dora again. He found out where she lived and worked. He used his clever mind to create funny situations to meet her. Sometimes he pretended to be an important inspector visiting her school. Other times, he would be at the opera house where she went, and he would wave at her from a distance. Every time he saw her, he called her princess. He made silly jokes. He made her laugh from her heart. Doris started to look forward to these surprises. She saw that Guido was different from the rich men she knew. He was not serious and boring. He was full of life and joy. He saw the world as a beautiful place. Dora's mother did not like Guido. She told Dora to stay away from him. She said he was poor and Jewish and not a good match for their family. She arranged for Dora to meet a rich man named Rodolfo. Rodolfo was a government official. He was serious and had no sense of humor. He talked only about money and his important job. At a big party for their engagement, Dora was very unhappy. She felt like a prisoner. Then, something magical happened. Under the long table at the party, Guido appeared. He had secretly come to find her. He looked up at her and smiled. In that moment, Dora knew what she must do. She left the table. She went to Guido. They left the party together on his old bicycle. Dora chose happiness over money. She chose love over duty. She married Guido, and they started their life together. It was a small wedding, but their hearts were full. Years passed. Guido and Dora had a son. They named him Giasu. Giasu was a curious and happy little boy, just like his father. Guido's dream also came true. With hard work and a little luck, he finally opened his own bookstore. It was a small shop with many books. The family lived in a small apartment above the store. They did not have much money. The furniture was old, and sometimes they had simple food. But their home was always filled with laughter. Guido loved to play games with Giasu. He told his son that life was a grand and wonderful game. He said that sometimes you face problems, but they are just part of the game. He said the winner of the big game of life would get a fantastic prize, a real, huge military tank. Gyasu loved tanks. He completely believed his father's story. For him, life was an adventure with his funny papa. Outside their little world, dark clouds were gathering. This was the time of the Second World War. The Nazi Party, led by Adolf Hitler, had gained great power in Germany. Their ideas of hate spread to other countries, including Italy. They hated Jewish people and blamed them for many problems. New laws were made in Italy. Jewish people like Guido could not go to certain schools or own certain businesses. People started to look at them with fear or anger. Guido tried to protect his son from this ugliness. When Gyasu saw a sign on a shop that said "No Jews Allowed," Guido made a joke about it. He said maybe they didn't allow spiders or kangaroos either. He told Gyasu that everyone has their own silly rules. He always turned something bad into a silly game. But the real world was not a game. One day, it was Gyasu's 5th birthday. It was a sunny day. Dora had gone to visit her mother. Guido and Gyasu were preparing a small birthday surprise for her at home. Suddenly, their door was pushed open. Soldiers in uniforms filled their small apartment. They were Italian soldiers, but they followed Nazi orders. They shouted at Guido and Gyasu. They told them they had only minutes to pack a small bag. They were being taken away. Gyasu was very scared. Guido held his son's hand tightly. He quickly told Gyasu that this was a special trip for his birthday. He said it was part of a new, exciting game. They packed their bags and were pushed onto a truck with other Jewish people from the town. When Dora returned home, she found the door open and the house in disorder. Chairs were turned over. The birthday cake was on the floor. She immediately understood. Her heart felt like ice. She ran to the town square, but it was empty. Then she ran to the train station. There, she saw a horrible sight. A long train with closed, dark cars was on the tracks. People were being forced into the cars by soldiers with guns. She saw her husband and her little son in the crowd. Guido saw her too. Their eyes met for a second. Without thinking, Dora pushed her way to a Nazi officer. She was not Jewish. She could have stayed safe. But she looked at the officer and said, "Let me on that train." The officer was surprised. He shrugged and pushed her onto the crowded car. She fell next to Guido and Gyasu. She wanted to be with her family, no matter what happened. The train ride was long and terrible. The car was dark, hot, and filled with too many people. There was no water and little air. Children cried. People were sick. After what felt like forever, the train stopped. The doors opened, and bright light hurt their eyes. They had arrived at a concentration camp. It was a place built for one terrible purpose, to imprison and kill people. The camp had high fences with barbed wire. Watchtowers stood at the corners, with soldiers holding guns. The buildings were long and gray. Everything looked dirty and sad. The air smelled of smoke and something worse. The guards shouted orders in German. They were cruel and hit people for no reason. Guido saw all this. He saw the fear in the eyes of the men, women, and children. He saw the hopelessness. He looked at his small son, who was clinging to his leg. He knew that in this place, children were often killed first because they could not work. He had to do something. He had to protect Jayasu's mind and his life. He bent down to his son. With a big smile, he said, "Jayasu, we have won. We are in the final round of the game." He explained that this whole camp was built for their special game. It was very hard and secret. The other people were all players too, but they didn't know how to play well, so they looked sad. He said they had to be very brave and follow the rules perfectly to win the tank. So, the great game began. Every morning, the prisoners were forced to stand outside for hours for roll call. The guards counted them. It was cold and tiring. Guido told Jayasu they had to stand very still and quiet to earn points. He hid Jayasu in their crowded bunk bed during the day, telling him to stay absolutely quiet like a mouse. He told him that if the guards found him, they would lose points. Jayasu tried very hard. Guido had to go to work every day. His job was to carry very heavy iron blocks from one place to another. The work was back-breaking. The guards yelled and sometimes beat the workers. Guido was always hungry and exhausted. But when he returned to the barrack in the evening, he would run to his son with a big smile. He would act very excited and say, "We got 60 points today. We are in first place." He made up stories about other teams and their scores. He used all his energy to make the game feel real. Food in the camp was a small piece of bread and some thin soup each day. Guido was always hungry, but he often gave part of his bread to Jayasu. He told him that eating all your food was an important rule of the game. Sometimes, Guido used his cleverness in the kitchen where he worked sometimes. He would try to steal an extra potato or find a way to get a little more soup for his son. It was very dangerous. If he was caught, he would be severely punished. But he took the risk for Jayasu. Dora was in the women's section of the camp. Guido could not see her or talk to her. This was very hard for him. But he never stopped thinking of her. One day, he saw a chance. He found a loudspeaker system in an office he was cleaning. He knew the main controls went to the whole camp, including the women's area. He looked around to make sure no guards were near. Then, he quickly spoke into the microphone. He did not say a name. He just said, "Good morning, princess." Then he played a short piece of music from an opera they both loved. In the women's barrack, Dora was working. She heard the voice and the music. She knew it was Guido. Tears filled her eyes, but she also smiled. It was a message. It told her that her husband and her son were alive. It gave her the strength to live another day. Months passed in this horrible place. The seasons changed, but the camp remained the same gray hell. People became thinner and weaker. Many disappeared, taken away and never returning. Guido worked harder than ever to keep the game alive for Jayasu. The boy was growing thinner, but his spirit was still strong because of his father's stories. He truly believed they were close to winning the tank. Then, near the end of the war, things changed in the camp. The sounds of distant guns could be heard. The Nazi guards became more nervous and more violent. They knew the Allied soldiers were coming closer. They started to destroy evidence. One night, the camp was in total chaos. The guards were running, shouting, and hurting prisoners. Guido knew this was the most dangerous time. He had to make a final plan for Jiasu. He found a small, empty metal box used for storing tools in the kitchen area. It was just big enough for a small boy to hide in. He took Jiasu there. He told him this was the final, most important part of the game. He explained that all the other players were being sent home because they lost. Now, it was just them. To win, Jiasu had to hide in this box until everyone was gone. He must not come out for any reason. He must not make a sound. He must wait until there is not a single person, not a single sound. Only then, when it is completely quiet, could he come out. That is when he would see the tank and win the game. Jiasu was scared but excited. He promised his father he would follow the rule. Guido helped him into the box and closed the lid almost all the way, leaving a small crack for air. Then, Guido went to look for Dora. He had to find her before the guards killed everyone or took them away. He moved quietly through the dark camp, hiding behind buildings. The camp was a scene of madness. Gunshots echoed. Suddenly, a Nazi soldier saw him. The soldier shouted and pointed his gun. Guido was caught. The soldier marched him at gunpoint toward a dark alley between two buildings. As they walked, they passed the kitchen area. Guido knew his son was watching from the crack in the box. He could feel Jiasu's eyes on him. He could not let his son's last memory be one of fear. So, as the soldier pushed him along, Guido began to walk in a silly, exaggerated way. He lifted his knees high and made a funny face. He looked directly toward the box where Jiasu was hiding. He winked and smiled a big, warm smile. It was a smile full of love and playfulness, just like all the smiles he had ever given his son. It said, "This is still our game. Don't be afraid." Then, the soldier pushed him around the corner of a building. A single gunshot rang out in the night. Then, silence. Guido was gone. The next morning, the camp was eerily quiet. The sun rose. There were no shouts, no guns, no marching boots. Jiasu, cold and stiff, slowly pushed open the lid of his box. He peeked out. No one was there. He climbed out. He stood in the empty yard. He remembered his father's rule, wait until it is completely quiet. He looked around. The silence was total. Then, he heard a deep rumbling sound. The ground began to shake. He turned and saw a huge, green, American tank rolling through the main gate of the camp. It was real. It was more magnificent than he had ever imagined. The tank stopped in front of him. The hatch on top opened, and a friendly-looking soldier with a different uniform popped out. He saw the little boy alone in the camp. He was shocked but smiled kindly. "Hello there, little man," the soldier said in a language Jiasu didn't understand. But the tone was gentle. The soldier reached down, lifted Jiasu up, and sat him on the tank. Jiasu's face lit up with pure joy. He had won. He had won the game. The tank began to move slowly through the camp. As they moved, Jiasu saw other people coming out of buildings. They were thin and dressed in stripes, but they were smiling and crying with happiness. Then, among a group of women, he saw a familiar face. It was his mother, Dora. She was searching the faces of the freed prisoners desperately. "Mama!" Gyasu shouted, waving his arms. Dora looked up. When she saw her son on top of a giant tank, she could not believe her eyes. She ran to him. The soldier helped Gyasu down, and he ran into his mother's arms. They hugged and cried. Gyasu could not stop talking. "We won, Mama! We won! We played the game and we got 1,000 points. Papa said if I stayed quiet I would win the tank, and I did. Look!" He pointed at the huge tank. Dora held her son tightly, her tears falling on his hair. She looked around for Guido, but she knew in her heart he would not come. She understood everything. She understood the incredible gift her husband had given them. He had used his love, his humor, and his imagination to build a protective wall around their son's childhood. In a place designed to destroy humanity, Guido had preserved his son's innocence and his life. For Gyasu, the memory of the war would not be of horror, but of a difficult game he played with his wonderful father, a game they won. Many years later, Gyasu told his own children this story. He said, "This is the story my father gave me. This is how he saved my life." He learned that his father's greatest act was not just hiding him in a box, but hiding the terrible truth inside a beautiful story. It was proof that even in the darkest night, love can be a light. It can create beauty. It can make life beautiful. That was the lesson of Guido, the man who turned a nightmare into a game for his son.